Ladies and gentlemen, the President, the Honorable Grover A. Whalen.
It gives me great pleasure as President of the New York World's Fair to welcome you here today during this visit, which I know is important to us and which I think will become increasingly important to you. Today you are securing a brief preview of the great fair which will open its gates to the world next April 30th. I need not remind you students that April 30th, 1939 marks the 150th anniversary of the inauguration of George Washington as first President of the United States under the Federal Constitution. The fair will commemorate this significant event in fitting and dramatic fashion, for we shall stage a vast pageant of democracy. We shall show the many opportunities which democracy offers to man in his pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. We shall show how it has enabled millions of Americans to live in harmonious cooperation, how it has been the foundation of American strength and greatness. The world is cooperating in staging this vast spectacle. More than 60 governments, representing more than 90% of the world's population, will have their official exhibits here. Almost all of the states of the Union will demonstrate what they have to offer to the world. In a very real sense, the world will be on display here at the fair, and the world itself will come to marvel at the greatest exposition which has ever been built. We expect to have 70 million visitors during the 6 months beginning April 30th. As future citizens of the great city of New York, you have a just source of pride in your fair, for while it is worldwide in its scope and in its participation, it belongs primarily to New York. You will soon be host to the universe. I know that you have already learned much about the fair in your classrooms and in your homes, but you ought to know more, and I believe that your visit here today will stimulate your curiosity so that you will follow it and study it as it deserves. You are now in the midst of the world of tomorrow in the building. You have seen models and plans of the completed fair. You now see many of these plans already translated into steel, stone, stucco, and landscaping. You can see how rapidly we are building every part of this enormous enterprise, so it will be fully prepared for the stirring opening. You are the citizens of the world of tomorrow. It is that better world which the fair is shaping and building because your lives will be influenced by it. We want you to understand what we are trying to do towards greater human understanding, which will lead to more effective cooperation, not only among men, but among the nations of the world. You are now standing by the towering Trilon and Perisphere. These are the symbols of the fair. Let us all hope that they will be effective symbols of the world of tomorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President, the Honorable Grover A. Whalen.
It gives me, as President of the New York World's Fair, great pleasure to bid you an official and hearty welcome to the world of tomorrow in the building. You can see for yourselves how rapidly and how beautifully we are building your fair. I say your fair because it belongs primarily to the people of New York, and New York, with the cooperation of the peoples of the world, is building a great exposition that is worldwide in its meaning and in its scope. For the first time in its history, New York is presenting a vast international exposition, an exposition for 70 million visitors. We shall be host to the world in 1939. I realize that you already know many things about the fair. You have discussed it with your teachers, your parents, and your fellow students. You have seen it in the newsreels, heard it on the radio, and read of it in the newspapers. Now you are in the very midst of it. You are standing in the shadow of the Trilon and Perisphere, the theme building of the fair. If you look towards the east, you will see 4 statues representing the 4 imperishable freedoms: the freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, the freedom of the press. At the head of them all, surrounded by the foreign buildings of other great nations of the world, you will see the magnificent building of our own federal government. Look about you in every direction, and you will find beauty and excitement and the many promises of things that will be completely ready for the world on April 30th. The date itself is filled with meaning, for on that day, 150 years ago, George Washington was inaugurated in the city of New York as the first president of the United States under the federal Constitution. This event, of the highest importance in the history of America and of the world, we shall celebrate. We shall render a stirring homage to democracy with her freedom and her opportunities. We shall exhibit to the world the spectacle of how millions of Americans have lived and worked in harmony and cooperation, and how they have built the greatness that is America today. I am particularly glad that you are students, because I believe here we are building one of the greatest educational institutions the world has ever seen. I know you realize that a fair is a place for fun and amusement. Certainly, we shall have all that, but much more. Here you will see exhibited the forces that will influence and shape the world of tomorrow, that world of which you will be the citizens. That means that this fair will continue to influence your lives long after the year 1939 has passed. The day of the opening is rapidly approaching. You ought to lose no time in studying your fair, its plans and progress. This fair will be worthy of the best, that is, the American civilization of today and tomorrow. It will be worthy of the great city of New York, of which you will soon be citizens. I urge you to learn to know it and to appreciate it. In 1939, New York will be the center of the world, and the fair will be the center of New York.